Hey, welcome to this week's podcast and video. Why didn't I achieve my goal race time?
That's what we're going to be talking about today. We've noted down a few threads,
Themes? Common themes, aren't
common themes that we have noticed that may contribute to why you didn't achieve your race goal time.
And we're going to talk mainly in relation to Auckland Marathon, because that's the event that's just been on. We're a lot of our group, and we're in Auckland at the moment, so focus on that one.
And being a marathon, time is a big factor. Maybe a little bit more than in a trail event because of
very measurable.
Yes, it's about pace, time, whereas trail event can be more about heart rate and experience.
Yes, different courses and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So well done to all our crew who ran at Auckland Marathon. That was just so awesome, eh?
It was it was awesome, big weekend, emotionally filled weekend. It's like racing through all of you, Yeah,
we've been quite tired since.
Oh my gosh, we've been wiped. But it's part of the gig, and it's all in good fun,
and everyone achieved their goal times. Pretty much everyone in the crew had awesome races, and the running conditions were really good. And no crazy wind. There was a bit of wind forecast and a bit of showers, but that started later. So the actual running conditions on the race itself in the morning, Sunday morning, were brilliant.
Yeah, and you had a client that did the half who beat his previous PB. Was it by 12 or 18 minutes?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's quite a lot of time.
Yeah,
it's quite a lot of time.
Yeah, and even all the marathon time, because when we predict someone's marathon time, give have a bit of a range, and I think more or less everyone was at the top of their range, the faster end of their range, and I think the running conditions have a bit to do with that, eh? That's pretty cool.
For sure, and it was just considering the weather that was either side of it, it was pretty amazing. For those that morning, it was.
Hey, it's better than last year, eh?
Oh yeah,
last year was torrential rain.
Yeah. And muggy. It was really muggy as well.
Muggy, it wasn't muggy at all this weekend. Yeah. It was nice. Anyway,
that's about the weather.
Anyway,
we talk about the weather all the time.
Talk about the weather
every time, all the time.
So,
but we're not going to do that.
We've got 4 headings, themes, if you will, about why didn't I achieve my goal race time, and we've kind of categorized them to the mental side, inconsistent training, lack of aerobic based development, and lack of event specific training. So we're going to fire into those a little bit, and then we've got a bit of a solution at the end of
so I think a great place to start is the old mental side. Start at the top.
Start with a ticker.
Yeah. What's your mind telling you? You're telling you that you're better than or worse than your time is probably going to be, because both can happen.
Because it all starts, the mental side isn't just in race day, is it? In the training, as you're getting close to the event, it can start 4 to 6 months out when you randomly pluck your goal time out of thin air.
I was just about to say, it probably could start at the finish line of the year before. Next year, I'm coming back and I'm doing 3:30 because this year I did 4 hours,
Yeah, for sure. We see that.
Yeah. So, there's, it's not saying that it can't happen. Not saying it can't happen at all, that you can go from 4 hours to 3.5 hours. But there'd just be a lot of things to be put in place to ensure that you have the best possibility that could happen.
And we're not saying that it's not good to have goals to work towards and to achieve. Yeah.
And I think it goes back to we've previously talked about in other podcasts, you're kind of only capable of doing what you can do, and at that point of time in your training. And that's a discovery that will happen along the way of your training. you know, and like if you're working with a coach, then you know, would be able to guide you a bit more to see if it's like, yeah, that's realistic or no.
That's what I was thinking too. Like your training should match your goals. Kind of thing. And then there's like measurable points along the way of you know, am I on track and things like that.
Yeah, for sure. And that can just be through like
simulation, of paces or lead up races as well.
I was about to say that. Lead up races.
Lead up races are great.
Yeah, and it just ties into like one of the other, I reckon, like with your aerobic based training, it kind of ties into that, how that goes as well. But we can talk about that just a little bit maybe next. So I suppose, like, long story short,
mental side, setting a goal that's outside of your current ability. And then in relation to race day, because it can all go wrong on race day too. Like that gives us a result that's not what our goal was, because we could be racing an outcome instead of the process. You're not following our process, or we suddenly go against what our sort of plan was for race day.
You get like, and obviously it's really easy, you know, it's an exciting atmosphere, and you're like fresh because you've tapered, and you're like, I'm ready to go. And
get dragged along by a pace group or whatever.
Just like the sudden like thing in your brain, you're like, okay, I'm just gonna hang around the 3:30, because if I stick by the lollipop guy 3:30, I'm gonna get there in that time because I'm close to him at the start line, you know. And you just kind of like think about too much, like crossing that finish line, and just like fantasizing.
And you're like tapered, and you feel so good, and you're supposed to feel good. You're supposed to feel good on race morning, tapered. You're supposed to feel good, full of energy. You're supposed to feel good even 10Ks in.
You're not out there for like a 10K PB. You know, so don't race a 10K PB and then hang on for the next 32Ks.
And often like like data suggests with some people, I mean, if you're, you know, some people might be in that 3:38 to 3:40 range, or maybe if you're at the, you know, closer to sub 3 and you're like a 3:05, your data suggests a 3:05. There's a big difference to randomly pulling out a sub 3:30 or a sub 3. Like if you're, you know, that's sort of 5 to 10 minutes. Like when you look at a marathon time, like difference between, like, say, a 3:40 and a 3:30, like that's a big difference in pace per kilometer. So just randomly, like, you know, pulling out a faster pace, like that's a big difference.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you're gonna be able to like do it, and it might sound a little blunt, but it's just what it is, you know. And it doesn't mean that like you're a failure or anything like that, because ultimately no one really cares like what your time is. You are the only one that cares, and why you care could be linked to all sorts of reasons. So don't let your ego dictate your outcome, because it will probably end up being a bruised ego, because you'll probably like blow up.
Ego is a problem, I would say, like in relation to choosing goals.
Let's not beat about the bush, you know.
Ego is a bit of a problem, I'd say. All been there. So I guess that summarizes mental side. It's like choosing a measurable, like being realistic about what your goals are, and centering your training around that goal too, and just being measurable about what they are. And I guess that's where like engaging a coach and asking for help, and with that sort of stuff, or other experienced runners, or getting someone to help guide you, that can really help.
For sure. And so I think like the mental side also just like sprinkles through your training, right? So you know, it really does. Like, so I think the next kind of heading that we were going to talk about is like the lack of aerobic base. So that's essentially running slow. And like running slow is all subjective in terms of like where you're at. And the only way to get faster at running slow or your slow pace is by running really slow at the start. You will get quicker with the same amount of output and the same amount of like benefits. But initially, like in the first, what would you say, is it the year, 6 months? Like if I'm really dedicated at like aerobic training, how long do you think it would take on a, is there a rough way to?
There's different levels, like that I see.
Yeah.
I mean, you initially get like a good adaptation after like that 3 or 4 weeks even of in a base phase. 3 to 4 weeks of like dedication to it, and it doesn't mean that every single one of your runs is an easy pace or anything like that. You've got other like sessions scattered in there, but it's just being disciplined about what the session that you're in is, like all training. So yeah, especially if you're new to training aerobic base, it can be very frustrating at the start. And there's other variables too that have got to be correct, like your zones have got to be correct from the outset as well. And like you'd want to have your heart rate and pace zones sort of set up correctly as well, which I guess we can talk about a bit later. But yeah, stuff like that comes into it. So yeah, there's that initial, but yeah, I mean, aerobic-based development never stops, does it?
No, that's right.
Yeah. So you kind of, if you look at it 6 months out from a race, you have your sort of base phase, and then your sort of preparation, and then your sort of event specific, and then after your big race, a couple of weeks of cruising recovery stuff, building back up, and then it's like base phase again.
Yeah.
So it's just this cycle that goes around and around, and so it never stops.
That's right. It's yeah, that's right. It's just, I was just thinking that I started aerobic training on the trails when we met, and I remember this one specific run, and I went to Shakespeare in Auckland, and it was a really hot day, and I think I was running even in the middle of the day, and I was pretty like obsessed with like making sure that my heart rate didn't go over zone 2. And when you're new to this, like there's no consistency. So what I mean by that is like I wasn't able to like run consistently and stay consistently in zone 2. I had to walk a lot. And it was quite frustrating, but I got there, and like it was hot, and I walked heaps, and I'm pretty sure my average Ks was like 9:30s, and my heart rate weirdly was actually really low because I was like swinging between like at the top of my zone 2 and then like way down, and I had to kind of do that, but as a result, like it worked. So it's a bit of an ego bruising.
That's what I was just thinking when you were describing that.
Ego bruising activity, but I think pretty sure that no one got onto my Strava and was like, "What the heck, Charlotte? You're running really slow."
Yeah, it's all in our own heads. Yeah, especially if you're like a roadie, and you're trying to do aerobic running. Yeah, your pace is going to be like probably 30 seconds slower than what you think your easy pace is.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a bit of ego deflation there, and the old Strava glory, might not be as glorious as you'd like it, but that's all good. I mean, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I don't even think about like that sort of stuff anymore. Like
no,
my paces or whatever, I don't really mind unless I'm like racing like something, whatever. But you're targeting something, but yeah, I don't really mind like all that sort of stuff anymore.
Yeah.
You just get used to it, and yeah, no one knows like what you're doing for your training. Like it doesn't really matter, right?
No, it doesn't. And
what matters is race day, really. Like if you're targeting something, you're like that's your time to shine. Like when you're out there, you're targeting something, like, that's your time to do it, not in training.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's why it's called training.
Yeah. Not PBing on Strava. So I think also another thing about running slow and doing aerobic based training is it gives you an opportunity to like work, like get to know your body, because when you're running fast, you're using a lot of momentum, right? And then when you're running slow, like for me, one of the things I did was I was able to like be really aware of like what's my ankle doing and like how can I slow down, because essentially like trying to run slow by just slowing down is quite hard. But if I'm like really like put that mind to muscle of like what my body's doing, I could use other parts of my body opposed to just that physical like run slower thing to run slow. And as a result of doing that, I get stronger, like stronger muscles in my ankles, in my feet and in my core, you know, like all those kind of stuff can slow you down. And it's
you're not
really
using
distracting.
as much.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Lack of.
You notice it in like hills as well. Like your body will, you're forced to find a more efficient way to like get up that hill.
Yes,
and whether
that's
like through how your your cadence is up the hill, or how your breathing is. You start like plugging into other areas of how you can be efficient, and ultimately your body finds that more efficient way to pump blood and oxygen around, and therefore move you forward like faster for that lower spend of energy. That's what it's all about.
Yeah.
Getting you fitter.
Yeah.
And a strong aerobic base. So strong aerobic base underpins every distance race, like from 800 meters even and above. It's what underpins everything. It's what holds you together at that 35 to 37k mark, when you're like putting it all on the line and you're like racing. You're holding on. You're just holding on at the end of your marathon. But you're doing it. You're not falling apart. That's aerobic base. Like that's what that is.
Yeah, and then like it's so don't worry, you won't for your whole marathon training, you won't be just doing it easy runs. So it, like Chris said, like well actually no, did he say that? I was gonna say like if you have a good aerobic base, then you'll be able to do your harder sessions harder. So ultimately, like that's what you want, right? You want to run fast. And so who knows, if you're already a fast runner in your fast sessions, like maybe you could go faster if you have a stronger aerobic base.
Definitely, yeah.
Because just like your aerobic base is, keeps developing, like you can get faster as well.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So
it's one of the endurance training sort of sayings, isn't it? Or mistakes that a lot of runners and athletes do. It's like easy runs are too hard and the hard runs are too easy. Because you're doing your easy runs too hard, and maybe you're doing too much volume as well, then you're not able to target those hard workouts and get the most out of them either. And so you're just, you know what I mean? It's just those weird like terminology like grey zoning comes from, because you're just not getting that specific nature of the easy or the harder sessions.
No, you just
and then grey zoning,
stirring it all together,
just not getting the best out of yourself, like as a runner or an athlete. Yeah. Anything else on aerobic?
No, I think
Probably
that's.
not, eh?
I think
kind of feeds into the next thing, really, doesn't it?
It's a lack of event-specific training. So what that means is like going out training for Auckland Marathon or a marathon, doing some marathon pace sessions, workouts. So how do I know what my marathon time is if I have a goal that is too fast for me, or how do I know that I'm tracking? Sorry, how do I word this? How do I know how do I figure out my marathon time if I don't know what my marathon time is? Okay, how do I figure out my marathon pace if I don't know what my marathon pace is? Time is. Shoot, does that make sense? Pace and time.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you've if you're self-training, hopefully you've chosen a measurable, like a goal time, therefore a goal pace that's within your ability, right? Obviously, if you're being coached, like what we do with our runners and athletes, is we can work that out, because we set up your training zones based off your lactate threshold, and we would most definitely know your other race times that you've done, and from your previous race times, like 5K, 10K, half marathon, and combining that with other factors like how long you've been running. Is this your first marathon, or are you a seasoned campaigner? Like that kind of stuff. Other lifestyle factors as well come into it. We're able to piece together like a sort of 5-minute range of what your expected marathon time would be, and then we simulate that in training. We simulate that pace, and from the data, we're able to be like, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Or no, that was a bit quick. We need to dial it back 5 seconds. From that sort of thing.
And I guess essentially, like when we do these marathon sessions, like you'll be running quite a few Ks in the session, like at marathon pace. And then it's kind of like seeing what the data does and then simply asking you as well, like, well, you could ask yourself, like, could I run X amount more Ks to make the 42 Ks up at this pace? And like, if the answer's, yes, then it probably is around about your pace. And if it's like no, if it's like no, I feel like I could run like another like 30 Ks on top of the 30 I've done, then you're probably running too slow. And if you're like shit and tapped out, like then you're probably running too fast. So it's just being like honest with yourself as well.
Know what you're comfortable with too, and I think that's, you got to kind of have confidence in what you're doing as well. I think that's important, and like you said, does this pace, this output feel sustainable? Does it feel good? So marathon pace sessions can be I don't know, a good one that I kind of on the assumption that you've built up some base and some volume and stuff like that. Good, normally I prescribe like 1 by 5K and 1 by 10K at marathon pace. So the session might be like a few Ks warm up at easy pace, and then 5Ks at your marathon pace, and then 2 to 5 minutes recovery in between, and then 10Ks at marathon pace, and then your cool down afterwards. So you might end up with like a 25-ish K session. That's like a starting point. It's sort of 20 to 25K, by the time you have your warm up and cool down at either end. That's a sort of a first port of call.
Yeah, and like marathon pace is a funny pace, like, like it's gonna get hard, like in the last like 7, 10-ish,
definitely
like,
7, 5 to 7.
You want to be like thinking like, okay, thank God I did go like, that weird pace at the start, because like it's gonna come out like later in the race, so
like any race, it's about having the appropriate energy input to match the rate of fatigue that you're going to be doing for that distance or for that time that you're going to be out there. It's the same for any race. But so it is a cunning, like the marathon pace, it's so cunning, because you can be feeling like pretty good at 28 Ks, and then at 35 Ks you're like, whew, man, still 7 Ks to go.
I think like
and that's good.
At the end of the sessions, like I was just trying to think, like you shouldn't be feeling, especially when you're getting like close to the 30K, you shouldn't be feeling like really out of breath. You probably should be feeling tired because you've been running for like 3 hours or whatever, which is a long time to be running, but you shouldn't be feeling like, just like mentally a bit tired and physically a bit tired. I think that's kind of like how I finished a lot of my training runs. Like, just
obviously the trainings, those sessions are accumulative too. So, you might be like 10 weeks out and you do your first marathon pace session. You're like, oh yeah, that was sweet, because you haven't built up enough, like you haven't built up a lot of fatigue and stuff yet. Typically I see like it's that sort of 4 or 3 weeks out kind of thing, Like there'll be like one session that normally gets everyone, like when we're coaching people, They'll be like, that was hard. And it's not necessarily because the pace was wrong or anything like that. It's just a cumulative fatigue And you see it like though you see it in the data as well, and that's how you know it's kind of all right too when you take those factors into account. They'll be fine for like 1.5 blocks of their marathon pace stuff, and it's just that last like 5 to 7 Ks where it's just like, you know, a slight bit of cooking going on.
Yeah.
Where they fatigue like into their like sub threshold kind of stuff, and you're kind of like, yeah, that's all right, because you know that's sort of simulation of that last 7 Ks of a marathon too in your race. Like that's what things look like too.
And I think this is also another thing about doing blocks, I reckon, as well, is like, so when you do blocks, you have like X amount of time at an easy pace, and then you have to get up and go again at like running faster. And I think it's a good thing because essentially that's like added race, because you don't run 42 Ks in training at marathon pace, right? But I think the fact that you have to slow and then get going again creates, it's quite a lot of energy, opposed to if you just continuously ran you know, at marathon pace. That would also sometimes be easier, I reckon. I think
there's a mental aspect there. It's like, get going again.
Which is, it's all good. Like it's good. It's a good thing because like it's kind of getting race stimulation without the fatigue of running like literally 42 Ks in your training run at marathon pace.
Yeah, don't go and run 42 Ks at marathon pace and train.
Unless you're super duper fast.
Yeah, who would run 42 Ks in marathon training? I guess like we're talking, you know, that sort of 2 hour 40 and below kind of marathoner. They could go up, you know, 1 by 15 Ks, 1 by 20 Ks at marathon pace, with the easy blocks around, and they'll clock up 42 Ks comfortably. You know, and that'll be like a 2 hour 45 session.
Yeah.
You know, which is appropriate for an athlete of that level. So we've got to train our own training, eh?
Yeah.
Don't go running for 3.5 hours in training. Like, I think that generally the like in marathon pace training, a marathon pace specific session, the longest I kind of send someone is about 3 hours. Yeah, in those peak weeks, maybe like 3 hours 10, like depending on the person, 250 to 310 kind of thing, eh? So diminishing returns, like once you start digging a hole, like, you know, into the 3 hour mark, and you're doing like big blocks at marathon pace, it's diminishing returns. That's risk versus reward kind of thing. You know, you just might not be getting up for that Tuesday workout, you know, or that Wednesday like hill session. You just might be too poked.
Yeah, for sure.
You might catch a little niggle, or the next cold that's going, or that kind of thing.
On the niggle, that leads us really well into our fourth little.
Did we talk about this?
Yeah, we've just been talking about that. Literally, just
before we move on.
Oh yeah.
The other bit about event specific training. So we talked about marathon pace. Is just in relation to Auckland, is like getting some hills like in your training. Like the first 17 Ks of Auckland is like undulating, and then of course you got the bridge, which is a decent. So yeah, just getting some like undulating, like marathon pace with undulations, and a bit of like hill stuff during the week as well. I wouldn't say hill sprints. Not a huge fan of like hill sprints for a lot of people. Some people they're all right. But some hill running like during the week, maybe like just a faster hill run, like in an undulating area during the week where you're pushing a bit harder, that kind of thing. That, and maybe with your marathon pace session on the weekend, maybe one block is undulating and the second block is flat, like that kind of thing.
For sure. Sounds good.
That in.
Good one.
It was the last bit of that.
Nice. Cool, yeah. So the last thing that we're going to talk about, well, last thing, but is like inconsistent training, and like injuries and niggles like don't actually have to happen. It's not a requirement of running. Being a runner is getting like niggles and injuries. Like it does happen, obviously.
Yeah, it's an interesting saying that,
it doesn't have to happen. And like,
yeah.
so
especially an injury. Yeah, because most injuries start off as a niggle.
Yeah, you just run through it more. Push it into an injury.
Yes, I gotta do the session.
Can't stop running until it's injured, until my leg is chopped off.
Yeah. So it's an interesting saying that you hear that on like particularly like certain groups, because we travel around, like we live in the bus and we travel around, so we get around to different like group runs and stuff, and there's different like themes that run through different groups around the place that we end up in. And some, sometimes it's like, you go running with a group that like we'll train hard, go hard or go home kind of mentality, and injuries is all part of it and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, you see like the runners and athletes in that group, might spend 30% of their time injured. It's not the way. Like it's not the goal. Like, because if you're spending large chunks of your year injured, then you're not training. Like, you're not getting any consistency at all. Yeah, it doesn't have to be that way. Okay?
It doesn't have to be that way. And and like fatigue, like I think it's very common actually that you're one or the other. You're more prone to getting injured or niggles, or you're more prone to getting fatigued.
You're sick. Yeah. Kind of falls into that category. Yeah.
So, if you're on that kind of side of it, it's like knowing when to say no, or just like changing your plan. Like for myself, like I'm more on the fatigue end of the thing opposed to niggles. And like I can only really run 4 times a week. If I start running into like the 5th time a week, like it's quite a lot of toll on my body. And that doesn't mean that I like don't do other stuff, because I do plenty of training. Like I do plenty of walking and like strength, and I go for bikes. But I find that running is actually it's pretty high impact on your body. And if you're someone who is a little bit sensitive to things, like myself
and me
and Chrissy boy, we're both sensitive little people. Then probably running like 4 times a week is probably enough. Like, I don't think I have any clients that run more than 4 times a week currently. And that's
we're talking like 4 like quality runs too, right?
Totally.
Like, so there's like some workouts in there, and some some of these runs can be long, and we're not just talking about going out for a 30-minute.
No.
Yeah,
would be going insane if I did that. Even like extending the sessions but not adding a 5th run makes a difference. Because I think just even though you across like the 4 runs, you do enough time to add up for another run, is something in it, I think, that is just a little bit more tiring.
So it's one thing we talk about quite a lot, is like the training mix. Like every individual's got their like training mix and their training balance that's right for them. And so because it's kind of like, I can do 5 runs, but I'm going to be too tired to do those 2 strength sessions. It's kind of like, well, maybe like 4 runs and those 2 strength sessions are better. Like, because it's going to help you like be stronger, help your running form, help prevent niggles, like that kind of thing, help prevent fatigue, sickness, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so it's about like getting that mix that's right for you. So I guess and that's one thing we talk about like to our group a lot, and runners and athletes that we coach is because we're not there with you, like putting your shoes on, like when you go for your run, are you all right to run today? Everything good? You're not there. We need to we got to take responsibility for our own running too, and tune into ourselves as runners and as athletes, and knowing when to make that call of like, you know what, actually I'm not like 100% today. I'm gonna miss this run, have an extra day off this week, or whatever it might be, or work's been extra stressful this week. My kids have had a cold as well, and I'm not going to push this like workout session today. I'm just going to do a 30-minute aerobic run instead. instead of like doing this like 2x2K at half marathon pace.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do that instead, because I feel like if I do this run, I'm going to compromise myself. Like maybe I'll catch that cold, and I didn't sleep well last night because the kids were up, and all that kind of stuff. It's just like knowing, it's better to accumulate your training like in a measured way than to like push like things like that. It's really funny, like often when I see if I get a runner or athlete that I personally coach who gets like injured, like gets an actual injury, you can always trace it back to like that sort of 2, 3, 4 weeks beforehand. Like it'll be a chain of like things that kind of build up to the event. So there's all just that kind of stuff, and learning to tune into ourselves, what we need, and that.
Yeah, for sure.
So if you're getting niggles a lot in training, or exhaustion, or you're getting colds, flus all the time, like multiple times a year, then and you're trying to train, and then maybe it's something you need to look at. Hey.
Yeah, it can just be. You're usually just like outside. It's like coming out and you're running, but it can be outside of the actual run that you went on for 60 minutes. This could be. Yeah. Your body is a holder of things, stress and like, and so there's a reason why everything happens, and it's usually not at that breaking point.
It's not that one run that you think it was.
No.
Yeah.
And and
I guess training someone else's training. We see this quite a lot, like maybe someone gets their training plan off like an app. It's a generic plan off an app, or Google, whatever, free training plan, that kind of thing. And maybe it's like an elite training plan. You see it quite a lot, like especially those like American plans, like they're just like volume, they're like very heavy volume based, and I don't know, it's not really suitable for like an everyday kind of runner to jump into something like that.
Yeah,
as we're like comparing like ourselves, and we start comparing our training with someone else's training, or this like elite athlete that we're following on Strava, like suddenly think that we're capable of like doing that kind of stuff. And so it's just being realistic, like
and it's all like normal, right? Like I think it goes back to what we started with, the old ego. And like I've definitely like questioned, like, man, I wish I could run more or run faster or do this or do that. I'm getting missing out. And then I'm like, actually, like probably I'm a bit tired actually. And there's a reason why I start like questioning what I'm doing, because if I like look at the results or look at like how I've done in races, like I've done all right, and when I say I've done it right, like there's a physical result kind of thing, but there's also like on the day, like I've done a good race, and like it's just been a result of doing what works for me. And it's going back to like no one cares like how you do, as long as you're having a good day out. Like people care if you're having a good day out, like that's,
and that you're happy, and
happy
loved ones care,
that's
that
all
kind of thing.
They don't care about the fact that you got 4 hours instead of 3.5, like people aren't that maybe if they I was gonna say maybe if they are, get some better friends.
Trade in your mates, trade in your friends. Cool. So that kind of covers inconsistent training, I think.
Just do what works for you, and that is sustainable for all areas of your life.
Like, outside influences come into training for sure.
And then don't let unless everyone's different, but if you're the person that's prone to getting fatigued, like, and then the rest of your life is unmanageable, maybe you're doing too much, things like that. It's just like acceptance of what you can do, And ultimately, if you do that, then you're going to be happy with everything.
Whatever outcome you get, eh?
Yeah.
Mm.
So I think just like a solution to kind of wrap this up is knowing your training zones.
Yeah, it's a really good place to start, eh? Yeah, knowing what your training zones are for you as an individual. Because then you know, like from that, then you know what your easy pace is or your aerobic heart rate is. That's a really good place to start. One thing I see and hear online or I hear people say is like, oh, I tried doing heart rate training and it doesn't work. Yeah, or it was too hard. I was like literally walking the whole time.
Well, that's the thing, right? That's how it is at the start. Like,
sort of, yeah. Your zones could be incorrect too. Yeah. So yeah, there is walking like for some people, especially with hills, like when you're trying to do aerobic training for the first time or you're a beginner at doing it. If you're a bit more of an advanced runner to begin with, then you're just going to be running slower, like from the outset, like from the start of the start of the run, you push start, you're going to just be running slower. Probably like 30 seconds, 15 to 30 seconds, maybe 40 seconds slower than what you think your easy pace is. I see that quite a bit.
Like, well, the really simple way of figuring out your training zone is engaging someone to help you with them. Taking all the guessing work out, and we get it from doing threshold tests or like maybe a half marathon. We can get your threshold from that, and then set your zones. But essentially, do we tell them how? Do we tell them how on this podcast?
Oh yeah, we can tell you how. You can go and do it yourself.
Yeah. Find a run that you've sustained a heart rate for 20 minutes. Yeah. Actually, maybe you'll better explain this.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just looking at like some of your old data, you could pull if you've got a 10K or a half marathon that you've executed really well, like i.e. you haven't blown up and then you finish strong, you can get your peak 20-minute average from the last part of that run. And so if you've got like heaps of data, you can go back through your data and check multiple runs, and you sort of from that you gauge a theme of what your heart rate threshold is, and then from that you can enter it into a calculator. I think Strava has a lactate threshold. You can set your zones off the lactate threshold, and Strava or like Training Peaks, we use Training Peaks, and you can use a calculator from there, and from that you'll get an idea of what your zones are. And so that's what we kind of do. Like if I get a new runner or athlete that I'm coaching, and they have a Garmin and they brought all their data with them, which is hugely helpful, then I can go through I can find like all their peaks for all time, and from there like come up with their threshold, and then like after that it's kind of you kind of reference it back to training, like. So I can also get their pace zones as well from that same 20 minutes. You can put that into a pace zone calculator as well, and then it's a matter of like cross-checking it. Like so, the week after I'll be like, okay, sweet, I think I know what your heart rate and pace zones are. I reckon like your easy pace is around 5:30. Go into an hour run at 5:30 on the flat, and let's see if like the heart rate data comes back aerobic. Like nice steady aerobic, and then from that I kind of know that we're on the right track.
Yeah, and there's some sort of like subtleties on how accurate this is, and like when you get into like wrist heart rate monitors and chest, it's kind of like is when it's like in an important next step, but it's not like you can't set them without a chest strap, but like ultimately like
it is more accurate.
It is more accurate, and that will be better for you because you might be able to run faster than we think, because your heart rate's not like inaccurate. So just things like that are a good investment with your training, especially for something like a marathon. because like if your wrist heart rate is telling you fibs, then like you may be going out too hard, and then you're gonna blow up as well. That's just another thing to kind of take in consideration.
Yeah.
Depending on how serious you want to be, and it's probably the faster that you get, the more important it becomes, because like if you are like of the 4.5 hour plus kind of half a marathoner, it probably doesn't matter so much because you're just out there for an aerobic run. But when you're kind of getting closer to the 4 or 3:30,
3 hours, yeah,
3 hours, it's really important because like heart rate never lies. Pace is like, 5:30 is always 5:30. It doesn't matter if you're on a hill, doesn't matter if you're on the flat, doesn't matter if you're downhill, like it's always the same. But what is different is the output. And yeah, so little things like that are a great investment. If you want to get to your A race time. Yeah, and it's just recommended.
And I don't recommend like so another thing, going back to the person that's like, doesn't work heart rate training, like often they've like they've done like a calculation, whatever it is, what is it, 220 minus your age, something like that, and it's really not accurate at all. It's like a broad stroke like for the general population, but for like training it's just not accurate at all, because your zones could be like way, like not even close to that. Like, man, I can have like two 30-year-old males that of the same level, like they might have the same marathon time or the same half marathon time, and their training zones are completely different. Like they could be 20 to 30 beats like different, like in terms of what their aerobic ranges, and that's just all to do with that individual. Like, so they just have a different higher or lower lactate threshold, and therefore max heart rate as well, than the other person. It's just all to do with that individual. So yeah, that's why we use lactate threshold.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe quite often I've had runners or athletes join before, and they're like, oh yeah, I tried heart rate training or aerobic running once and it was just ridiculous. I was walking the whole time, and then I'm like, oh, how did you think? Oh yeah, I did the calculation. And then we find out, like, after we do the threshold session or I look at their data, I'm like, yeah, no wonder, like, because your zones are particularly your zones are higher than what that what is it, 220 minus your age, the math calculation, your zones are just higher, so because your threshold's higher. So that kind of thing happens.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Is that?
So that's a really good solution. Like, that's a really good thing to know when it comes to helping to prevent all these other things that we just talked about.
Yeah.
Like, knowing what your data is, you're less likely to get inconsistent training if you're training your right percentage of things at the right intensities. You're going to get the most out of your aerobic base, and you're going to, when it comes to event specific, you're going to know more about what your exact, your training mix and your exact paces and stuff are, just from knowing that sort of information. Obviously, being coached, you're going to get a better result. Like, sorry to say. So reach out to us if you want help, like with your next race. We had really good results from our crew. They all had brilliant runs at the recent Auckland Marathon.
They did.
Just that thing of being mentored and not having to second guess everything yourself, and because anyone can kind of write a training plan. Like, you could write your own training plan. Like, you can pull a training plan off online for free, whatever. Like, anyone can kind of put together a training plan, but it's the navigating the training plan. That's the thing. Like, when life pops up, or knowing what your specific intensities, paces, training mixes, in relation to what's going to be best for you. It's all that stuff. That's the coaching. That's coaching. Yeah.
For sure. And I think I was just thinking that, we've just talked about this for 50 minutes, and there's other things that go on that we can talk more about in these 4 headings, but there might be something else that you going on for you that is like just like thinking about inconsistent training. You don't need to like talk about it heaps, but like another thing that inconsistent training is like not training at all. That's inconsistent training. And then, or like, going, all handy for 1 week and then doing nothing the next week. Like that's inconsistent training. You might not be getting niggles or you might not be getting fatigue, but that's still inconsistent training that is going to effectively affect on race day your outcome.
It's like was it zero to hero kind of mentality, or
or just like being of the mentality like, oh, it'll be right on race day. I'll just like won't train and I'll just sort of train on race day and hope for the best. You might get to the finish line, but you're really not going to get any better. Or like, you don't have to get, go do it by doing like off being stubborn or like, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you've still got to put your shoes on, get out there.
Yeah,
to do your training.
Yes.
And like equally as well, like it's like you need to have space in your life for this priority of yours. So it's like I'm choosing to train for XYZ, whatever it is, and these are my other commitments in my life. Work, family, like whatever, other hobbies, other things. Like so, we've got to be realistic about can training fit into your life? Like, can you prioritize? Tuesday at 6 a.m. this is when I do this run. On a Thursday it's in the evening, or I do a group run on a Thursday, like that kind of thing. Saturday mornings, my partner or wife looks after the kids, and that's when I, like that kind of thing. Yeah, that's when my sessions in the morning. Or it has to be on Sunday because we have this commitment. So it's like knowing. Yeah, you have to think about
knowing your life.
You have to think about your schedule too, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Well, I think I'm done, and we're done.
Good job.
Yay.
Cool. Give us a shout. As always, if you want some help with your running, we're currently training a lot of our group towards races in the summer coming up, like Tarawera 50k, 100k, 100 miler, Faultline Ultra further on in April. All that big group. We're getting together for Rage Against Riverhead.
Right.
Rage Against Riverhead, that's coming up. So we're doing a big CMF crew there for like a big, training runs for upcoming events. We've got a 35% discount for that event if you're coached by us or you're part of our annual membership. You can access that discount if you want to join our annual membership. It's just $30 for a whole year, and you can access that discount and come join us for some fun. And you can access many other discounts too. We've got like 15 other discount partners now. I was counting them up the other day.
Cool.
Pretty awesome.
Nice.
So yeah, just give us a reach out. Catch you on the next one, eh?
Cool. See ya. Bye.
See ya.